Hello and welcome. I'm James Azimoha and you're watching A News. Let's see your headlines. Tankers come under fire in the ongoing fighting between Iran and the US in the Strait of Hormuz. Ukraine is set to receive 16 French fighter jets as Western allies step up military support for Kyiv. And Azerbaijan and Slovakia pledge to deepen bilateral ties. Tankers have come under fire in the ongoing fighting between the US and Iran in the Strait of Hormuz. The UAE claims a crew member was killed and 8 others were injured in what it called a brazen attack on one of its vessels.
Iran has rejected US plans to oversee the Strait of Hormuz, saying Washington has no role in managing the strategic waterway. In a statement on Monday, military spokesperson Ibrahim Zolfikar warned that any attempt by US forces to direct shipping without Tehran's approval would be met with force.
We will under no circumstances allow the United States to interfere in the management of the Strait of Hormuz. The armed forces of the Islamic Republic of Iran will deal forcefully with any disruption to the passage of commercial vessels and oil tankers outside the route designated by Iran.
Later, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said Tehran would remain the guardian of the Strait of Hormuz forever, rejecting President Donald Trump's proposal that the United States should oversee the waterway and charge Gulf countries for its protection. Hours later, Trump said US forces had begun fresh strikes against Iranian capabilities linked to the strait and that Washington was restoring the blockade. He also said a negotiated settlement with Tehran remained possible.
We have numbers that we haven't had in years, and we're hitting them very hard, and it'll continue, and we'll see what happens. But we're knocking out all of their offensive capability, and we're controlling the straits. We're putting the blockade back, and it's a blockade not for anybody but Iran. In other words, anybody doing business with Iran can't go through. Everyone else will be able to go through.
The latest escalation continued with the US military carrying out a third consecutive night of strikes. Iran reported attacks on several locations and said it had targeted US military assets in the region. Tankers also came under attack in the Strait of Hormuz, while Bahrain reported intercepting Iranian aerial attacks.
The new round of retaliatory encounters between Iranian and US forces at the Strait of Hormuz is sparking regional concern. Tehran warns it will stop fulfilling its commitments under the ceasefire deal if Washington keeps violating the agreement. A news correspondent, Turash Shirinilu, has more.
Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, said on Tuesday that its Navy force hit U.S. military barracks, a satellite communication center, and a Patriot missile battery in Bahrain, as well as an airbase in Jordan, and also targeted 2 super tankers trying to transit the Strait of Hormuz under U.S. escort. In the wake of the latest trading of tit-for-tat fire for the 4th consecutive day, the Revolutionary Guards promised that retaliation operations against U.S. bases and interests in the region will continue, defying the U.S. military campaign on Iran. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, in a post on X, reiterated that Iran has been and will remain forever the guardian of the Strait of Hormuz, linking the Persian Gulf and the Sea of Oman. Araghchi said, whoever provides secure and safe passage of commercial vessels through the Strait of Hormuz should be also compensated for this service. He derided US President Donald Trump's statement on charging 20% fees at the strategic waterway. Iran's top diplomat added, 20% is of course too much. We will be fair. Also in a phone call with his Cypriot counterpart, Konstantinos Kombos, Araghchi blamed the US for what he called criminal and provocative actions in the strait for jeopardizing regional peace and security. And in New York, Iran's ambassador and permanent representative to the United Nations wrote a letter to the UN Secretary General and the President of the Security Council, citing instances of violation of ceasefire memorandum of understanding signed in June. Amir Saidi Ravani said that almost immediately after signing of the MOU and continuing to the present day, the United States has not only failed to honor its commitments, but has also actively and systematically undermined the very foundations of the Memorandum of Understanding. Back to Tehran, Foreign Ministry spokesman Ismail Baghai warned on Monday that Iran will stop fulfilling its commitments under the ceasefire deal if the US keeps violating its obligations, including on Iran's controlling of the Strait of Hormuz. Purash Hiralilu from Tehran for A News.
Now, the 4-year truce between Yemen's Houthi and Saudi Arabia appears to have come to an end after a series of strikes on airports in the region. The Iran-backed Houthis say they launched missile and drone attacks on Saudi Arabia's Aba International Airport in response to what they say was a Saudi strike on Sana'a International Airport earlier on Monday. No casualties have been reported. The Houthis have warned airlines against using Saudi airspace, while Saudi officials have not commented on the claims. Now, the United States says it will enforce its renewed blockade around the Strait of Hormuz, while President Donald Trump insists a deal with Iran remains possible. As the conflict evolves, questions are growing over security, freedom of navigation, and the prospects for diplomacy. Joining us now is Gustavo de Aristegui, a former diplomat who joins us from Rabat, Morocco. Good to have you, sir. Now, President Trump says the U.S. will act as the guardian of the strait. Is that a security mission or a political message?
It could be either or actually both. But in any case, let's wind up a bit, and I was watching your show before coming on it, and to be frank, I mean, you need to understand that there is a huge infight in the regime in Iran. Every time peace seems to be close, the Revolutionary Guard does everything in their power to try to derail it. They're trying to always contradict the President of the Republic, who has no power at all, always trying to contradict Ghalibaf, who is the chief negotiator, I don't know in which capacity or with which power, because you cannot negotiate anything if you have no true power, and you cannot commit your country to accepting anything. And then finally, the Minister of Foreign Affairs that goes from being positive and flexible to being revolutionary and ultra-Orthodox. The thing is very clear. It is absolutely against every precept in the law of the sea, the Convention of Montego Bay, that any coastal country of a strait must assure the safe passage of international vessels. There is nothing written supporting the claim that they should be paid for that. This is a racketeering scheme, very clearly a racketeering scheme. This is a mafiosi practice, as if they were Cosa Nostra. Actually, the messages have been very clear from the Revolutionary Guard. The vessels that have been targeted are those that refused to pay the fee. Now, the various sources that are experts on maritime information are confirming that some bandits that claim to be agencies are mediating between the Islamic Republic and the owners of ships and lines, so that they pay the fees, and they are keeping, of course, a percentage as intermediaries. This is a criminal offense under any law in the world. The United States is the greatest power in the planet. They don't want to control the Strait of Hormuz just to oppose the Iranians. It's to try to keep it open. And I really think that come to this position, this affects everybody. I understand that some European countries don't want to get involved in this war, but if the Iranians, after having signed several times and accepted several times several versions of the Memorandum of Understanding, derail the peace process over and over again, just to make sure that they can charge extortion money, I think that it is high time that the international community gets involved.
All right. Now, so if Iran cannot match US's military power, as you rightly mentioned, where does its leverage now come from?
Well, the leverage, the war was caused because there was 3 requirements from the United States to the Islamic Republic. Stop supporting, financing, using, and training your terrorist proxies in the region. They refused. Stop enriching uranium beyond 6% or at all, and they said that was a sacred right of the Iranian regime to continue to do it. They refused. And third, you need to freeze and stop your missile programs, making them carry bigger payloads and have a longer range. They refused. But now we have a 4th problem. And quite frankly, the Americans won militarily this war before the 7th of April. And they stopped just before. They almost annihilated what was left of the speedboats of the Revolutionary Guard. And now the Revolutionary Guards have learned through this war that the most effective weapon they have is the threat to close the Strait of Hormuz. And they're using it liberally. And this is a huge problem because this is asymmetric war at its highest peak. It is the best and most tragic example of how a weaker power can seriously inflict tremendous damage to the international economy and hold us hostage.
Yeah. Now, the Houthis have raised the prospect of another active front. How much does that complicate Washington's strategy right now?
Well, the Houthis are one of the terrorist proxies of the Iranian regime in the region. I mean, when I see the Houthi spokesperson yelling in front of TV cameras and full of medals, God knows where he got those. These are a criminal organization, and they are armed, trained, supplied, and financed by Iran. The ballistic missiles that hit the Saudi Arabian oil installations or airports, the ones that are trying to disrupt oil facilities in the Red Sea, come from the Houthis. The Houthis have been a constant enemy of the world, not of Israel, not of the United States, not of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia or the Emirates. They are disrupting world maritime commerce by trying to block the Strait of Bab el-Mandab. And this is a very, very serious allegation. That is an act of war, no matter how we look at it.
So has the crisis now become less about Iran's nuclear program and more about influence across the Middle East and who controls the Strait of Hormuz?
It's very well said. It is about controlling and extending influence over the Middle East. Let's put it very bluntly. In the last 2 or 3 years, the Iranian regime has lost part of its clout in the Near East and in the Middle East. I always make the difference. The Near East being Israel, Palestine, Jordan, Syria, and the Middle East further to the east. This is a very important distinction because they lost their allies that were the Bashar al-Assad murderous regime. They have weakened Hezbollah. They have weakened, Hamas has been weakened. The pro-Iranian terrorist militias in Iraq have been weakened. But if they are given the chance and they have the economic means, they will regain the channels. They will resupply, refinance, and strengthen their allies in the region. And let us not forget that the extortion money that they're trying to collect from the Strait of Hormuz is going to be used to try to extend their clout in the region. We're talking estimations from $100 billion to $200 billion a year. Just imagine what these individuals could do, this regime could do with those huge amounts of money. You would see a rise in the power of Hamas. You would see a reinforcement of Hezbollah. You would see a reignition of the conflict in Lebanon with Israel and in Hamas and Gaza, probably. You will see a reignition of sectarian violence in Iraq. You will see a resurgence of the power and the attacks of the Houthis in the region. This is extremely serious. So this is the link. The Strait of Hormuz and the extortion money that the regime wants to get from that is going to be used to destabilize the region and therefore cause very serious damage to world peace.
So now, for countries that rely on Gulf energy supplies, what matters more today? Who controls the strait or whether it remains open?
Well, it is very important to underline one thing. They have successfully affected the oil supplies and the gas supplies of some countries that are not especially hostile to them. It's the case of Qatar, who is the architect of the peace. And the first ship that was targeted by the Iranian Revolutionary Guards was precisely a Qatari gas tanker. This shows the bad faith of the Iranian regime. Those that helped broker peace were the first to be targeted. But the Emiratis have been reinforcing and building new oil facilities and terminals in the coasts of Al Fujairah, which is the only emirate that has a coastline at the Gulf of Oman, the Sea of Oman, whatever you want to call it. So they are going to be able to avoid the risks of crossing the Strait of Hormuz. The Saudis are building new pipelines toward the west so that they can export crude oil through the Red Sea. And obviously, the Kuwaitis are going to probably take advantage of those oil pipes that are going to be built and export their oil through Saudi Arabian territory. Mm-hmm. The problem is gas. And let us not forget that 30%, we're talking always about 20% of oil going through the Strait of Hormuz. 30% of natural gas goes through the Strait of Hormuz. And that is seriously hurting not only Qatar, but it's hurting the Iranian economy and it's hurting world economy. And this is very clearly the methods and the strategy of ruthless people that don't care about the well-being of their nation and their people. They just want power to gain clout in the region and to show their rivals inside the regime who really is the boss. And that is exactly what Ahmed Vahidi, who is a wanted man by Interpol, by the way, and we should really put this in the forefront. Right. General Ahmed Vahidi is wanted for terrorism by Interpol.
All right. That was Gustavo de Aristegui, a former diplomat who joins us from Rabat, Morocco. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Now, Ukraine is set to receive 16 French fighter jets as Western allies step up military support for Kyiv. The announcement came after a meeting of the so-called Coalition of the Willing in Paris, where France also agreed to help Ukraine produce French-designed missiles and radar systems. Russ Collin reports.
Well, the meeting of the Coalition of the Willing that took place here in Paris on Monday focused around three key areas. To start with, peace negotiations, trying to increase the pressure on the Russian president to come to the diplomatic table, ensuring there can be no discussions about Ukraine without Ukraine. Anything that impacts European defence interests and security interests must have Europeans present, and that Russian assets will remain immobilised until Moscow agrees to a peace deal. The second part was about ensuring there can be an increase in the pressure on Moscow, but also an increase in the deliveries of air defence systems to Ukraine and other missile capabilities, and not just those deliveries directly, but also developing the possibility for Kyiv to have the ability to license the manufacturing of European defence systems inside Ukraine, so to ramp up domestic production. The third part was about security guarantees and ensuring that they are very important for Europe, ensuring that they can be respected and implemented as soon as a peace deal, a ceasefire, is agreed. Now, we do know that Donald Trump at the G7 summit in Evian last month also suggested licensing for the US Patriot air defence system as a way of trying to support internal production inside Ukraine. And there was also another summit that took place on Monday before the Coalition of the Willing gathering. That was a so-called anti-ballistic missile coalition of several key European partners trying to increase the anti-ballistic missile capabilities inside Ukraine, but also in the wider defence community. The European Council President Antonio Costa saying that ballistic missiles represent a new threat to European security. The next meeting of the Coalition of the Willing, of allies of Ukraine, is scheduled to take place at a ministerial level in September. Ross Cullen, A News, Paris.
All right, after a short break, we'll take a look at the media forum taking place in Shusha. Stay with us. Welcome back to A News. Now, a panel on digital platforms and information safety has been discussed at the 4th Shusha Global Media Forum in Azerbaijan. Officials and international experts have been examining the impact of AI in the digital age.
Artificial intelligence, deepfakes and online safety were among the main topics of discussion during the first day of the 4th Shusha Global Media Forum in Azerbaijan. Speakers warned that the rapid development of AI is making misinformation harder to identify and increases the need for stronger fact-checking, media literacy and cooperation between digital platforms and users.
So I think it has to be really a mix of platforms helping, but also education. With anyone who's using social media and who's using AI to try and tell the difference, or at least stop and pause before sharing information that they think may not be correct. And I think it's going to get to a point where we will just disbelieve everything that we see online because we won't be able to tell the difference. How to fix that, I have no idea.
The discussion also focused on the responsibility of digital platforms to keep users safe and respond quickly to harmful content. TikTok said it removed more than 600,000 videos that violated its policies in Azerbaijan during the first quarter of this year, with 99.4% taken down before they were reported by users.
And last year, throughout 2025, in total we have taken down over 3.6 million videos in Azerbaijan, just for your awareness. Also, I would like to point out that, as I mentioned, we do increase the use of AI in our moderation, of course. And today, up to 96% of the content is being actually moderated with the use of AI.
Speakers agreed that as AI tools continue to evolve, technological safeguards, effective regulation and stronger digital literacy will all be needed to help create a safer online information environment.
Now, Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev has welcomed Slovak President Peter Pellegrini to Shusha for official talks during the first day of the Slovak leader's visit to Azerbaijan. The two presidents held both one-on-one and expanded format meetings discussing bilateral cooperation and the implementation of their strategic partnership, with the visit set to continue in Baku on Tuesday. Following the talks, the leaders addressed the media, outlining their priorities for cooperation and regional security.
We have covered many issues today, and once again we reaffirmed that we have quite an extensive agenda. It is suffice to take a look at the composition of delegations to see the directions in which there is an active dialogue. It is not just dialogue, but there are actually practical efforts underway. Today, Azerbaijan-Slovakia political ties are on a very high level, and reciprocal visits is a demonstration of that. In 2024, we've signed a declaration on strategic partnership, and implementation of that declaration is evident. It's before us. A very high political engagement, implementation of joint projects it requires strong political will. We are pleased that Slovakia is also taking active part in restoration in Karabakh.
In Slovakia, we are firmly convinced that also European players, in addition to intense efforts in additional armaments, financing additional arms production, they will also not forget looking for diplomatic solutions at round tables, so that together we get war away from our continent, so we may yet again focus on developing the regions that need it and deserve it. I'd like to reaffirm that Slovakia in 2027-28 will continue through its embassy in Baku to be the North Atlantic Alliance contact point in relation to Azerbaijan, and I'm glad that in the area of security, defense capabilities, our defense ministries have excellent relations already, and I'm delighted that Slovakia will be able to present at the upcoming September Defense Trade Fair here in Baku the results of our joint cooperation and our agreements.
Now, the second day of the Shusha Global Media Forum continues to bring together journalists, policymakers, and media leaders from around the world. As discussions evolve, attention is turning to the ideas, partnerships, and messages likely to outlast the event itself. Joining us now is Nadima Rahimli, Vice Chair of the for Social Welfare for Citizens Public Union, join us from Baku, Azerbaijan. Good to have you, ma'am. Now, what makes forums like this more valuable beyond the discussions taking place on the stage?
Thank you so much for inviting me to this discussion. It's 2 days already. It's going on. The fourth Shusha Media Global Forum takes place in Shusha. And of course, place itself, as we know, the Karabakh, Shusha is a like sacred place for us. And this forum is taking place here already for the fourth times. It has very crucial point for us, crucial meaning for us, and also not just for us, as it's an international media forum. And I do believe that this, the result of this forum, the discussions that are going on this forum, will be very successful and are already successful and will lead to the further discussions here. Of course, this media forum is not just important, as I mentioned, for Azerbaijan. Here we see that the different global televisions, the policymakers, the journalists are here, participating here. So I think that the experience sharing also will be very successful, and all of them, for all of them, it will be very beneficial.
Mm-hmm. Now, how important is face-to-face dialogue at a time when so much communication happens online?
Yeah, of course. You know, as we know that everything is online, but still we do need for the communications online, because in order to get the information from the first source, from the origin of it, let's say, it's very important. And in order to not to have the misunderstanding, not to have the disinformation, and also to get the from directly from the peoples, especially as yes, His Excellency Mr. President participated in the meeting, and he in the forum, and he answered the questions of the journalists. And so, you know, to get this opportunity to have the question, to ask the question directly from Mr. President, and also as 2 days the negotiations, our discussions are going discussions are taking place. So to have the opportunity to discuss it among these people, among the journalists from all over the world, it's very important rather than having it online.
Mm-hmm. Now, do international media forums such as this help in building understanding between countries, or are they mainly to provide a platform for exchanging views?
I think that these forums like that, these international media forums, they serve for both of them. So they serve as an understanding between the countries, or to have a forum for exchanging views. Of course, for Azerbaijan, it's a platform for exchanging views. But besides it, it's also a good platform for understanding between countries, because, you know, sometimes maybe, for example, in some cases, Azerbaijan's political view can be understood in a different way by different countries. But here, having discussions, having the platform for sharing opinions, I do think that these such forums serve for both of them.
Now, what role can journalism play in reducing misunderstanding during periods of international tension and conflict in terms of social welfare for citizens involved?
Yeah, of course, the role of journalism is very important in the, let's say, in the social cohesion, and by providing credible information, by providing accurate and verified information to the community, it's the first role of the journalists, it's the first role of the media, and by having it, journalists have very crucial point here, have a very crucial role here, and having it, of course, they can reduce misinformation, they can reduce any misunderstandings, they can reduce unnecessary panics, they can reduce such things among the people, and even in any needs for the social welfare, they can also highlight the humanitarian society. So here, the role of the journalism, the role of media is very crucial.
Now, has artificial intelligence changed the way journalists think about accuracy and credibility?
Yes, of course. As artificial intelligence we say that it occupied our daily life, and I do believe that it also influenced to, as in other spheres, it also influenced to the media as well. Unfortunately, sometimes maybe in some media resources we can see that the information, the articles were prepared just by the artificial intelligence, and they are just it was just shared. So that's why AI can be used. Of course, AI can, as we are also using it in our daily life for good purposes. AI also can be journalism, but it cannot fully substitute the real journalism, let's say real writings, real articles, because real judgments by the journalists, it can, of course, help it, it can amplify it, it can foster, help in the empowerment of the, let's say, articles or the information that's written by this, but of course, the real journalists, they should not let the AI to fully substitute their work.
Mm-hmm. Now, how important is it for international cooperation in tackling challenges that affect the media worldwide?
Yeah, of course, it's very important, especially, that as today's topics also was about misinformation, was about the cyber threats, about the AI governance, of course, and international cooperation enables to share the best practices of it. Of course, we as Azerbaijan, or as a developing country, we are also trying to learn it, like to learn the ways of it. It also mainly strengthens the professional standards, and also promotes responsible and ethical journalism globally.
All right, now, how can media organizations respond to misinformation without losing public trust?
Public trust should be, for me, for the media, the public trust should be the first, the first goal, because any information, of course, any information can be delivered. Not journalists, let's say, by ordinary people, the information can be delivered, but media should always achieve the public trust. And to achieve the public trust, they should always provide verdict information. They should always provide the real information. They should recheck it and provide it. And for now, unfortunately, I'm not speaking about Azerbaijan, but in global level also we can see that sometimes as fake information was spread, and sometimes of its public trust sometimes has gone down. But of course, there are still the information media channels that the people are trusting always. And every time something happens, the people first of all check this media information. So media, the journalists should always, their first goal should achieve this public trust.
Now, in your opinion, do you think audiences today are looking for faster news or more reliable news?
Of course, to get the information very fast, it's very important. Rather than to have it, for example, if the information is very new, you should, the people also, the community also should want to get it, to achieve it in very fast, but achieving very fast, very quick information and not having the fake information, of course, it's not right. So I do think that the people, as myself, as I'm also a citizen, as myself, I'm also trying to get the quickest information, but quickest news. But for me, the main thing is to achieve the real information, to achieve the true information, right information, rather than achieving it quickly. That's why whenever also something happens, for example, if I want to check something, I always trying to go to the to search for the reliable media sources and to know what's happening.
Mm-hmm. That was Nadima Rahimli, Vice Chair for Social Welfare of Citizens in Public Union, based in Baku, Azerbaijan. Thank you for your time, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Now, global media professionals have wrapped up 2 days of discussions in Shusha focused on the changing role of journalism. Our correspondent has more.
The fourth Shusha Global Media Forum has concluded in Shusha. It brought together nearly 160 media representatives, policymakers and experts from 53 countries. The final day began with welcome remarks from Hikmat Hacıyev, the assistant to the president of Azerbaijan. Participants joined a series of panel discussions, one-on-one conversation and side events. Among the key sessions was peace building and public discourse through the media lens, which explored how the media can foster dialogue and support conflict prevention, and the impacts of disinformation on peace, coordinated media responses, which examined the need for international cooperation in tackling false narratives. Another panel, the role of media diplomacy and media literacy in rebuilding trust, focused on strengthening public resilience to disinformation and enhancing cross-border cooperation between media organizations. Side events also addressed artificial intelligence, visual storytelling, and the future of digital journalism. The discussions followed the opening day's program on Monday, which featured a question and answer session with President Ilham Aliyev, as well as meetings on information security and the D8 media platform, an Azerbaijan initiative which helps developing member nations. Held under the theme, the mission of media in promoting peace, restoring truth and rebuilding trust, the two-day forum concluded after bringing together international voices to exchange ideas on strengthening cooperation, promoting responsible journalism, and addressing the challenges facing the global media landscape. İlknur Sedemirova with Elbrus Musayev reporting for A News from Shusha, Azerbaijan.
Now, the death toll from the Bangkok pub fire has risen to 30, with 24 people still in critical condition. Investigators are now examining whether safety failures contributed to the blaze.
Bangkok authorities say they're tightening safety checks after one of Thailand's deadliest entertainment venue fires in recent years. The governor has announced stricter random safety inspections across the city, while police have interviewed 34 people and say possible charges will be considered once the evidence has been gathered. The owner of the pub remains in intensive care. The number of people who have now died has risen to 30, with more than 70 people injured, 24 of them in a critical condition. That's according to the latest figures from the city's officials. Investigators believe an electrical short circuit in a ceiling air conditioner may have sparked the fire. Police are also examining whether emergency exits were obstructed and whether flammable materials used for stage decorations and soundproofing contributed to the flames. The blaze tore through the Rongbier Frau live music venue shortly before midnight on Sunday, after witnesses described an explosion, followed by a burst of flames and thick smoke. The venue has apologized publicly and says it is cooperating fully with the investigation, as grieving families gathered to collect the bodies of loved ones while forensic teams continued gathering evidence at the scene.
Now, protests have been held in the U.S. state of Maine after a man was shot dead by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents. Homeland Security say that an ICE officer feared for public safety when he opened fire on the man. They claimed the suspect was attempting to flee when agents tried to stop his car. The incident happened around 7 o'clock in the morning in the town of Biddeford. However, immigration advocates say the person shot was not an illegal migrant and had authorization to work in the U.S. A candlelight memorial service has followed protests in Maine. A major counterterrorism investigation has been launched in the United Kingdom after a suspected right-wing terror plot was uncovered. 12 people have been arrested over alleged plans to disrupt a Muslim gathering in the town of Ipswich in eastern England. Zainab Farizada has more.
12 people have been arrested over an alleged right-wing terrorist threat targeting a major Islamic gathering in Suffolk. Counter-terrorism police say the UK Ijtima event at Shrubland Hall was ended early on Sunday as a precaution after officers identified what they described as a potential serious threat. The event, attended by thousands of people, was ended early after police declared a major incident. Officers have confirmed the investigation is linked to right-wing terrorism, with searches continuing at addresses across the country. 8 men have been arrested under the Terrorism Act and remain in custody. 3 other men were arrested on suspicion of conspiracy to murder, while a woman was detained on suspicion of assisting an offender. The arrests were carried out across several locations, including Surrey, Greater Manchester, Essex, London and Ipswich. Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood said the police response to what she described as a credible threat had undoubtedly saved lives. She said she knew the incident was deeply concerning for British Muslims and called for communities to unite against hatred. Counter-terrorism police said there was no wider threat to the public, but urged people to remain vigilant and report anything suspicious. Suffolk police said around 15,000 people who attended the gathering had safely left the site, while officers would maintain a visible presence around Shrubland Hall in the coming days. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer condemned the alleged threat, saying he would not tolerate attacks on Muslim communities or any form of anti-Muslim hatred. Zainab Farizada, A News, Manchester, United Kingdom.
All right, after the break, we'll look at some regional stories. Stay with us. Welcome back to A News. Now, Turkey's new unmanned fighter aircraft has successfully completed its first live fire test with a domestically developed supersonic missile. The development marks another step forward in Ankara's efforts to expand its aerospace and defense capabilities. Adam Moro reports from Istanbul.
Turkey's first unmanned fighter aircraft, the Bayraktar Kızılelma, has successfully completed its first live-fire test using Roketsan's domestically developed Jet 230 air-to-surface supersonic missile. According to developer Baykar, the aircraft struck its target from a distance of more than 120 kilometers in a test carried out over the Black Sea. The successful firing marks a new milestone in the aircraft's development, as engineers continue to integrate new weapons and combat capabilities. The latest trial follows a series of successful weapons integration tests carried out over the past year. The Kızılelma has previously fired the Gökdoğan air-to-air missile, as well as several domestically developed precision-guided munitions, steadily expanding its operational capabilities. The aircraft has achieved a number of other world firsts. Late last year, 2 Kizilelma prototypes completed the world's first autonomous close formation flight by unmanned fighter aircraft utilizing swarm autonomy technology. In another milestone, it became the first unmanned fighter jet to destroy an aerial target with a beyond visual range missile. The program forms part of Turkey's broader drive to build an independent defense industry and reduce reliance on foreign military technology. In recent years, Baykar has emerged as one of the world's leading drone manufacturers. Last year alone, it recorded $2.2 billion in exports, with foreign sales accounting for 90% of its revenue. Baykar has signed export agreements with dozens of countries, underscoring Turkey's burgeoning role as a global supplier of advanced unmanned defense systems. This is Adam Morrow for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
Afghanistan and Iran are looking to strengthen consular cooperation and improve services along their shared border. During talks in Kabul, officials from both countries discussed ways to better support citizens traveling between Afghanistan and Iran. Our correspondent has more.
Kabul and Tehran seek closer coordination on the movement and treatment of citizens traveling between the two countries. According to Afghanistan's foreign ministry, the two officials discussed bilateral relations, consular services and border cooperation. Amir Khan Muttaqi said relations between Afghanistan and Iran were growing and stressed that consular services should be made easier, faster and brought into line with accepted standards. Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister Wahid Jalalzadeh also described consular coordination as important and expressed hope that continuing talks would improve the management of consular affairs and expand services for citizens of both countries. No specific agreement or timetable was announced. Afghanistan and Iran share a roughly 950-kilometer border where relations have at times been strained by disputes over Helmand River water rights, migration, informal crossings and border demarcation. Tensions have occasionally turned violent, including a deadly exchange of fire between border forces in May 2023, although both sides later called for calm. For now, both governments are presenting dialogue and closer administrative cooperation as the way forward. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, A News.
All right, that's the news for this hour. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to A News.